What if I told you that Pepsi once traded soda for warships with the Soviet Union, briefly becoming one of the largest naval powers in the world? What if I told you that the company began not as a global cola giant, but as a struggling pharmacist's side project that went bankrupt twice before finding its footing? Today, PepsiCo is worth over $250 billion, generating more than $91 billion a year in revenue, and has transformed into a snack and beverage empire with Frito-Lay as its crown jewel. But the story of Pepsi is not just about cola. It's about resilience, reinvention, and a brand that became part of global culture. Let's dive into the origins and rise of Pepsi. The story begins in 1867, with Caleb Bradham, born in Chinquapin, North Carolina, the son of a farmer and a schoolteacher. From an early age, he showed a fascination with medicine and chemistry, which led him to briefly attend medical school before returning home when his father's business collapsed. Caleb wasn't just another small-town kid. He dreamed big, first studying at the University of North Carolina, then enrolling in medical school. But when his father's business failed, Caleb had to drop out and return home, settling as a local pharmacist in New Bern. There, in his drugstore, Bradham mixed tonics for customers who believed in the healing power of carbonated drinks. The year was 1893. Caleb Bradham was experimenting with syrup mixtures in the back of his drugstore. He stumbled on a formula made of sugar, water, caramel, lemon oil, nutmeg, and other ingredients. He called it Brad's Drink. His vision was simple: to offer customers something refreshing that also aided digestion. 5 years later, he renamed it Pepsi-Cola, combining pepsin for digestion and cola for the cola nut flavoring. Pepsi caught on locally. Bradham's drink was bottled and sold throughout the region, and the Pepsi-Cola company was officially incorporated in 1902. By 1910, there were over 240 bottling franchises across the United States. It looked like Bradham had a hit on his hands, but fate had other plans. The business began to falter after World War I. Bradham had gambled on sugar prices staying high, buying massive amounts of sugar at 30 cents per pound. But when the market collapsed and sugar prices dropped to just 2 cents per pound, Pepsi was crushed under debt. By 1923, Bradham's company went bankrupt, and Pepsi-Cola was sold at auction. The once promising drink was passed between investors like an unwanted asset, failing to compete with Coca-Cola, which had already established itself as America's dominant soda. Caleb Bradham lost everything: his company, his fortune, and eventually returned to running a small drugstore until his death in 1934, with little to his name, a sharp contrast to Coca-Cola founder Asa Candler, who had already become a millionaire and Atlanta's mayor. Pepsi was sold out of bankruptcy for pennies on the dollar, just $35,000, to investors who tried and failed to revive it. Pepsi's resurrection began in 1931, in the depths of the Great Depression. Loft Inc., a candy manufacturer owned by Charles Guth, acquired the struggling Pepsi brand. Guth wanted Pepsi to compete with Coca-Cola, but his early attempts fell flat. What changed Pepsi's fortunes was an innovation in marketing. Guth introduced the 12-ounce Pepsi bottle for the same price as Coca-Cola's 6-ounce bottle. In the middle of the Depression, when every penny mattered, this twice as much for a nickel strategy was a stroke of genius. Sales skyrocketed. Pepsi ran radio ads that became cultural phenomena, embedding the nickel nickel jingle into American households. For the first time, Pepsi wasn't just surviving, it was starting to bite into Coke's empire. Even more revolutionary, Pepsi became the first major US brand to aggressively advertise to African American consumers in the 1940s. At a time when Coca-Cola largely ignored this market, Pepsi built loyalty in communities that were otherwise excluded from big brand marketing, a bold and forward-thinking move. Pepsi's comeback positioned it as Coca-Cola's first true rival. For decades, the two companies battled fiercely. Pepsi targeted young people, positioning itself as the choice of a new generation, while Coca-Cola leaned into tradition with its classic Americana image. The competition intensified in the 1970s with the famous Pepsi Challenge taste tests, where consumers were blindfolded and asked to choose between the two sodas. Pepsi's sweeter formula often won, and the campaign was a marketing masterstroke. The cola wars weren't just about taste, they were about culture, identity, and global dominance. The rivalry extended into advertising, celebrity endorsements, and international markets. Pepsi's bold moves helped it carve out a permanent place in the beverage industry. One of Pepsi's strangest chapters came in 1959, during the Cold War. Vice President Richard Nixon introduced Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev to Pepsi at an American exhibition in Moscow. Khrushchev loved the drink, and within a few years, Pepsi became the first American consumer product to be sold in the USSR. But there was a problem. The ruble was not a convertible currency, so how could the Soviets pay for Pepsi? The solution was trade. For years, the USSR paid Pepsi in vodka, stolichnaya to be exact. Then, in the 1980s, the deal escalated. Pepsi agreed to accept a fleet of Soviet warships and submarines as payment. Briefly, Pepsi had one of the world's largest navies, which it quickly sold for scrap. Pepsi's CEO at the time quipped, "We're disarming the Soviet Union faster than you are." While Cola Wars defined the brand, Pepsi's real breakthrough came in 1965 when it merged with Frito-Lay. This strategic move transformed Pepsi from a beverage company into a food and drink powerhouse. Today, Frito-Lay alone generates more revenue than Coca-Cola's entire company, with brands like Doritos, Cheetos, and LAYs dominating the global snack market. The diversification insulated PepsiCo from the ups and downs of soda sales, giving it a dual engine of growth. The empire expanded further with acquisitions like Tropicana, Gatorade, and Quaker Oats. Pepsi was no longer just Coca-Cola's competitor. It had become something bigger. The company's success has been shaped by bold leaders. Charles Guth rescued Pepsi from the scrap heap in the 1930s. Donald Kendall took it global and cemented its Cold War legacy. And Indra Nooyi, who became CEO in 2006, carried PepsiCo into the 21st century. Born in Chennai, India, she earned degrees at Yale and the Indian Institute of Management before rising through corporate America, a rare feat for a woman of color in her era. Under her leadership, Pepsi shifted toward healthier products, invested in sustainability, and achieved consistent double-digit growth. Nooyi left the company in 2018 with an estimated net worth of more than $350 million, cementing her place as one of the most influential women in business history. But Pepsi has also faced controversies, from backlash over marketing campaigns like the infamous Kendall Jenner ad, to criticism over sugar in its beverages and environmental impact from plastic packaging. Like every multinational, Pepsi's story is one of triumphs mixed with challenges. Today, PepsiCo is worth around $250 billion, with over $91 billion in annual revenue. While soda remains a core business, most of Pepsi's profits come from snacks, particularly Frito-Lay. The brand is deeply embedded in global culture, from Super Bowl halftime shows to celebrity endorsements with Michael Jackson, Beyoncé, and beyond. What began as a small-town pharmacist's failed experiment is now one of the most powerful consumer goods companies in the world. Pepsi's story is proof that sometimes failure is only the beginning. If you had invested just $10,000 in PepsiCo stock back in the mid-1980s, that investment would be worth well over $1 million today, with dividends reinvested. That kind of wealth creation shows that Pepsi wasn't just a cultural phenomenon. It was also a wealth machine for long-term shareholders. While Coca-Cola has often stolen the spotlight in the stock market, Pepsi quietly outperformed in stretches thanks to its diversified snack empire, turning believers into millionaires over the decades. Looking ahead, PepsiCo faces challenges as soda consumption declines worldwide, but its diversified portfolio gives it resilience. While Coca-Cola dominates beverages, Pepsi's empire of snacks and packaged foods gives it unmatched scale. The company is investing in energy drinks, plant-based nutrition, and reducing sugar in its core brands. In many ways, PepsiCo today is less a soda company and more a global food conglomerate, a transformation that makes it one of the most enduring consumer giants of the past century. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this origin story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Stag Research, your go-to channel for business deep dives and founder legacies. Got a hot take on Pepsi's future? Drop it in the comments. Mr. Stag, logging off.